Welcome to the Ricky Matthews Show from the Citizens Bank Studios. We all sort of enter into the new year after a holiday season that for me was terrific. A lot of time with family and friends, time up in the Mississippi Delta, and had my son Justin down from New York City for an extended period of time, and just got to spend some quality time with him. But it was wonderful, and as we always do, we reflect as we go into the new year. I thought my friend Doug Davis, who is the chief of staff for U.S. Senator Cindy Hyde-Smith, I think this quote that he posted from Benjamin Franklin, I think really does reflect well on sort of where most of us are as we enter into the new year. But he said, "Be at war with your vices." Aren't we? We're kind of at war with our vices. "At peace with your neighbors, and let every new year find you a better man." I think we're all focused on being better people, but we are at war with our vices. So lots of folks are thinking about eating and losing weight. Lots of people, talking about improving their relationship with their family and their friends. Everyone's focused on something as we enter into the new year. It's a time to reflect. I saw this quote. Let me see if I can zero in here. It's from a site called "I Love My Life and I Love You." And it said this: not everyone is given the chance to grow old, so appreciate every single day of your life. Not everyone is given a chance to grow old. As we sit here and reflect about how the Gulf South is connected, Jeff Duncan and I talk about that all the time, that New Orleans is part of us and we're part of New Orleans. You think about the terrible, terrible terrorist attack that took place there. It is hard to reflect about it and not feel for the people who have been impacted by it. And you think about our country and what our country is going through. But someone who was there yesterday and heavily involved because of the Sugar Bowl, you can imagine, is my friend Jeff Duncan from NOLA.com and the Times Picayune. We'll get the latest on the Saints, but I want to talk a lot about what took place yesterday. I should also point out that we're recording this show on Thursdays when we could get our calendars in sync. This is going to be playing on Friday morning, so we won't have the benefit of knowing how the Sugar Bowl played out. But we'll spend a little bit of time today thinking about what this event meant to this terrorist attack meant to the city of New Orleans in this terrible moment. And Jeff has a lot of insights on that. So without any further ado, let me bring my friend Jeff Duncan into the conversation. Jeff, how you doing, my friend?
Doing good, Ricky. Thanks for having me on. Obviously, it's a sad time over here, very sobering time in New Orleans. We're used to the New Year being kind of a time of celebration, and it was anything but that this year. And certainly thinking about all the families and of the victims, and also, I think the honoring some of the heroes that were involved with NOPD that prevented this tragedy from being even bigger than it was. Certainly could have been if you read the reports of everything that's taken place so far, and they're still coming in as we speak.
Yeah, man, I tell you that as we always knew, when an event happens on Bourbon Street, there are security cameras everywhere. So, when there was a shooting on Bourbon Street, we would be able to see it almost immediately. But you think about the number of citizen reporters who were there combined with the security cameras that were there, and we will know, and we already are beginning to see just every square inch of this terrible disaster. And it was just, God, just what a brutal event. I don't even know how to talk about anyone who'd be willing to end people's lives in this way. It's unbelievable, isn't it, my friend?
Well, think about this, Ricky. New Orleans is one of the, destination cities in the world, not just the country. People come from all over the world, and the heart of the city is the French Quarter, and the heart of the French Quarter is Bourbon Street. Everyone, whether it's your thing or not, comes to New Orleans, makes a point of at least visiting Bourbon Street. It's one of the most famous cities in the world. It's an iconic street. And so when an event like this happens, whether it's a positive event where people are celebrating the Saints winning the Super Bowl or something like yesterday, everyone can relate to it because they probably stepped foot on that street. especially right where it happened at the intersection of Canal and Bourbon, the two most famous streets downtown. So I think this tragedy resonated with so many people because of that, where it happened. And let's face it. I mean, we're presuming here, but that's one of the reasons why it occurred here. It was because of the resonance it would have, and because of the number of people that would be gathered in that spot. So yes, very tragic situation. This is New Year's Eve is when you come to New Orleans to celebrate and let the good times roll, right? And instead, it's a very sobering day after this tragedy.
You see, man, so many stories within the story. Of course, a young woman from Gulfport. WVUE had a terrific story of a couple from Mississippi who was able to avoid disaster for themselves personally, but they tell a harrowing experience. In fact, I thought WVUE in particular, I think they did a really good job of covering that aspect of it. And, come on, let's face it, NOLA.com and the Times Picayune, when there's an issue like this is when the best journalism probably in the United States mobilizes, and you get to observe some of the best reporters and editors literally in the world, especially for a local effort. I mean, the mobilization is incredible, isn't it?
Well, I think you know this, Ricky. I mean, I know you know it. I mean, the importance of your network as a reporter, the importance of your connections and your sourcing really comes into play when an event like this occurs, because it's not just a national event, it was a global, international event. And so you have to really lean on your sourcing. And one thing I've always said about New Orleans, I mean, it's the biggest small town in America. So when something happens here, good or bad, it resonates throughout the city. And yes, I can tell you my day yesterday, I woke up at about 6:45 a.m. That's normal for me. I did not go out New Year's Eve, Ricky, which is very unusual for me, but I've been so busy and had, a lot of work to do before the anticipated Sugar Bowl. So I said I was going to lay low, and, I was fortunate in that regard because I was up early and saw the news immediately on my phone. And as you can imagine, I mean, we're all human beings, right? As reporters, a lot of people had been out the night before on New Year's Eve, maybe after their work shift. So it took a while to get going. I bet by 8 o'clock, we still only had maybe several people on the story. But you could see as the day went on, the mobilization. And I was very proud of our effort. I thought the lead story in the Thursday editions of Times Picayune is one of the best hard news breaking deadline stories I've read. And that includes the Katrina coverage. It was extremely well done. Trying to piece together this story that has a lot of tentacles and is far-reaching, the impact. So I was very proud of the efforts of our people involved, and it's a testament to their connections and their sourcing that we were able to break so many national and international stories. We were breaking a lot of news yesterday with a lot of media trying to get to the same news.
Yeah, it is unfortunate. One of the headlines I saw is where the terrorist plan for New Orleans was defeated yesterday, unfortunately. I saw an interview with the police superintendent. It's too early to judge anyone, but one of the things she said, and I just don't think she was thinking it through, she says, we've proven time and time again we can have safe events, when she's talking about the Super Bowl. And she's saying that in the shadow of this event. It's, people are just, they just don't really know how to handle a situation like this in a lot of respect, do they?
Well, I mean, the problem with trying, I've read a lot about this in the last 24 hours, the challenge for local authorities, local police, and look, and during times like this, it's not just NOPD. I mean, they're bringing in jurisdictions from all over the state police are involved. I mean, I've talked to people that were out on New Year's Eve in New Orleans late, and there were hundreds of police officers out there. I mean, matter of fact, almost everyone I talked to said they've never felt safer. There was so much of a police presence up and down Canal and Bourbon Street. Literally on every corner there were police. So it's at some point, though, the scale of what you're trying to cover becomes too big to ensure safety. I mean, and you're talking blocks and blocks of streets with crowded, tens of thousands of people. It's just a unique place. It's one of the reasons why major sporting events come here, is because you have a grand scale gathering event space. The French Quarter is the magnet, but it also creates challenges to try and ensure safety for people because it's so many different entry points for it.
I had heard a report, and I forgot to check this morning because I think 6 have been identified so far. But was a couple from Israel killed?
I didn't see that. I did not see that.
It would be interesting. I wouldn't be surprised, but so I don't know. It hasn't been confirmed, so don't anyone quote me on that. But the point is, as you said, I will not be surprised to see when we see the dead and injured that they weren't from all over the world. They're from all over the nation, and it just proves the point that it is an international destination, New Orleans, and it's an international story, obviously. Not just because it's New Orleans, but because it's a terrorist attack that is how we started our new year. Hey, when we come back with Jeff, we'll continue this part of the conversation, and we'll also hear the latest from the Saints. We'll see you after this. Welcome back to the Ricky Matthews Show from the Citizens Bank Studios. I mentioned we're recording this on Thursday. So the event that we're talking about, the terrorism event in New Orleans, occurred yesterday. And, of course, Jeff Duncan and his team from NOLA.com and the Times Picayune were right in the middle of it all day long. Jeff, particularly as it relates to the Sugar Bowl. Since this is playing on Friday, we don't have the benefit of knowing how the Sugar Bowl played out. But there's still a lot to discuss as it relates to this incredible day in the history of New Orleans, another incredible day in the history of New Orleans. And as I read at the beginning of the show, not everyone is given the chance to grow old. So appreciate every single day of your life. A lot of people have been posting about how this is once again a reminder to live in the moment and never take anything for granted. It's amazing how events like this, deliver these nuggets to people to don't even take life for granted.
Yeah, I know. And I think, think times like this galvanize a city. We're in times where there's a lot of polarization, and all that melts away very quickly when you have a tragedy like this.
Yeah, I'm not asking you to comment on this, but Governor Landry posted a picture last night. I know what the intentions were. The intentions were there are a lot of tourism, a lot of tourists in town, a lot of Sugar Bowl folks in town. And he wanted to let people know that it was safe to go out, but it was him and his team at a swanky steak restaurant in New Orleans, and a big thumbs up. And man, I read the comments, and it was just unbelievable how negative people were about him smiling with his thumbs up. I understand what his intention was, but gosh, man, in the wake of something so painful, you almost, as an elected official, you almost can't do anything necessarily right in the wake of this other than focus on talking to family members and making sure that people are safe and whatever. Anything other than that, you almost can't win, can you?
Yeah, I know that's exactly what he was trying to do. I think the elected officials here, not only Governor Landry, but also local officials, are all attending the game, plan to attend. I know we're recording, but Thursday night they all plan to attend the game to kind of send a message that this event is not going to stop New Orleans. It's not going to stop tourism here. So I understood what he was trying. He was also trying to recognize, I think, the people working at the restaurant who working in the face of a tragedy not far away. So I understand it. And you and I know, Ricky, reading the comments on social media is not good for your health. It's usually hazardous.
No, it's not. And, here's the thing, and you're right. I mean, one of the first observations that my wife Ann made was just think about the shop owners and restaurant owners anywhere in the vicinity, really maybe anywhere in New Orleans, because there's a mood that starts to settle in that doesn't make people want to go and spend their hard-earned money. Think about all the service workers and everyone whose lives depend on having a good New Year's Eve and New Year's and, Sugar Bowl, all those pieces fitting together. It's life does go on, my friend, doesn't it?
Well, it's going to have to. I mean, we've got the Super Bowl here in about 5 weeks, and I'm sure, the NFL, I know the NFL had meetings yesterday with their security personnel and their detail with local officials. I mean, this is going to resonate and have an impact far beyond the Sugar Bowl and New Year's Eve here in New Orleans. This is a city that's built on tourism, and an event like this certainly will impact that. I know we interviewed Georgia and Notre Dame fans, on Wednesday, and a lot of them were going home. They weren't going to try to rearrange their travel to stay and watch the game because of this event. And I completely understand that. It's hard to think about going to a football game in the wake of something like this.
Yeah, really, really tough. Speaking of the Super Bowl, though, you have said this in the past, and you said it to me off the air, but it's a designated special event. It's a whole new level, a whole nother level. I mean, you're talking about focused on having a safe event. I don't think there's any event, maybe other than anything the President of the United States might be involved in, that's going to have more focus on trying to make it safe. I mean, you've been around that, haven't you?
Well, I can remember distinctly Super Bowl 36 in 2002 after 9/11. That was probably the most security detail. There were SWAT officers on the roof of the Superdome, through that event. So we have experience with high-level major events, global events like that here. And I've been in contact with Superdome officials throughout the run-up to the Super Bowl, and they've been having, Ricky, these meetings, there's hundreds of people in these meetings on security alone. So I'm not at all worried about it having an impact on the Super Bowl.
Well, let's shift gears in the short time we have left. The Saints are, I guess, officially at rock bottom now.
Yeah, I'd say so. Look, you and I talked. We knew this could happen this year. It was definitely a concern. It was a very precarious roster. And I think there's going to have to be big changes on Airline Drive. I'll be really interested to see just how extensive the changes are. I think that's what everybody's waiting to see, what the direction of the organization is going to be. The interest level of the games themselves right now has just dropped off. People want to see how they're going to fix this thing, Ricky, and I think that's the question that remains. We haven't heard from Mickey Loomis. We haven't heard from Gail Benson. I'm sure we will soon as the season ends, but that's what everyone wants to know. Where is this organization going?
And it's possible that if they do, you and I have discussed this, Mickey, because of his unique designation relative to the trust and otherwise, he won't be leaving the organization, likely will not be leaving the organization, but he could step aside and bring in a general manager. That's possible still, isn't it?
I guess, yeah, anything's probably possible. I know, talking to people close to him the last few years, he's, talked about retirement. So it's possible anything could happen, but the sense I get in talking to people is that he wants to be part of the solution and doesn't view himself, like a lot of fans do, as part of the problem. I think he feels like a responsibility to fix the situation before he moves on. And I think that's most likely the direction he's going to go.
Have you begun to think about one of the things you and I have talked about many, many times is that the fact that as it relates to the salary cap, the Saints just continue to kick the ball. They were restructuring contracts and pushing money down. But man, that it's starting to come on to roost for the Saints as it relates to the salary cap. They've got some hellacious decisions to make, don't they?
Yeah, and look, that strategy made sense when you were trying to win another Super Bowl with Drew Brees and you're going all in. That made perfect sense. It's exactly what Tampa Bay did with Tom Brady. But we see another organization right in the same division that has navigated a post-Hall of Fame quarterback playing career much better than the Saints have. The Bucs continue to win the division while they're in transition on the roster. It's the exact situation the Saints had with Drew Brees, and it hasn't been managed nearly as well. I think that salary cap management strategy, I had concerns about it a long time ago, Ricky, but it seemed like no one wanted to believe it. And you're right, it's all come home to roost. And that's what makes it so, I think, disappointing for fans and frustrating is there's no real easy fix here. It could get worse before it gets better because of the salary cap.
Whew, man, it's hard to hear that as a fan, And look, gosh, man, I really do think the Saints may not have been barn burners, but if they had not lost every single critical piece of the puzzle on offense this year at one time or another, there would have been a different outcome, wouldn't there have been?
Oh, no, there's no question. I mean, injuries have been a huge factor. There's no question about that. But, going into the season, you had to have better quality depth. I mean, injuries are a part of life. I mean, the Detroit Lions have 14 defensive players on IR, including 7 starters. And they're, 14-2? So yeah. It happens. I think we need perspective sometimes. I mean, the 49ers as well, they're down because of their injuries, but they're not this far down. And I think, that's something that you have to prepare for. And the Saints were not prepared.
And one of the most interesting stories in the NFL this year has been the resurgence of Sam Darnold. I mean, he's not just a flash in the pan. I mean, he fits extraordinarily well in that system. And now there's discussion about whether J.J. McCarthy may be somebody that would be expendable.
Yeah, I think the Vikings
what an interesting turn of events.
That's a good example of a team that, again, I think an organization that prepared for a transition. I would argue, Ricky, that if Kirk Cousins were in the same situation here in New Orleans, they would not have moved on from Kirk Cousins. They would have kept him. And the Vikings did the difficult thing. They moved on from him. They had a plan. They brought in Sam Darnold as a veteran transition, and he's been way better than anybody thought. And then they have a long-term solution in J.J. McCarthy. I'll be surprised if they move off either of those guys because they've got a good situation short-term and long-term at quarterback. The Saints have not managed that well at all, and it hasn't played out very well with Derek Carr either, in my opinion.
So interesting seeing these players that people have given up on move to different teams, and suddenly the talent that you expected out of them at their previous team starts to emerge years later. That's what's so interesting to me. But
well, it's good coaching. It's good coaching.
Yeah, I agree.
Good coaching up there.
Following the right system and having a good coach, there's no doubt about that. When we come back together next week, we'll talk about potential coaching hires. A lot of names that are out there. But listen, Jeff, you got a lot of hard work to do in the next couple of days. God bless you, my friend. And, stay safe.
Thank you, Ricky. We'll talk next week, buddy. I appreciate you.
You bet. This has been Jeff Duncan. When we come back, we'll be joined by JT Mitchell. We'll see you after this. Good job, man. Man, I appreciate you taking the time to be with us today.
Yeah. It's going to be a crazy week ahead. So,
woo, Lord have mercy. This is where Times Picayune